This is an exercise in how to create a motif, or as we used to call them, machine stitch for your embroidery machine. The first thing you're going to do in 6D is open up your 6D Embroidery Extra and click on the 6D Design Creator down at the bottom. We're going to choose Start a Design with no picture. Next, we're going to do this in the Draw window, which is where we have our motif tools. Click Next. And in the hoop size, I've changed my hoop size to 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters. Change hoop, enter hoop size, 10 millimeters, and OK. And then finish. And you'll now see this. This is your gridded area. I've reduced the grid size to 2 millimeters. If you look up here, you can see it's 2 millimeters. And the way I changed that was I clicked on the preferences icon and changed my grid size to 2 millimeters. Apply and OK. The reason I did that is because our FOF machines are limited to 9 millimeter stitches for regular stitching. And I'm guessing, since you said you wanted a machine stitch, that you're looking for the smaller stitches. We're going to start with, I think, an easy one, which is what I taught in a previous lesson, and that's a little pine tree. We're going to look for a pine tree, and you can click on Mini Pix or open whatever drawing you have. And in Mini Pix, there's a pine tree. And you can see how tiny it is. You may either close the viewer or click on the X at the top. Now I don't want my little pine tree to be quite that small, so I'm going to bring it up here and I'm going to make it about 8 millimeters. Then the next thing I have to do is realize that if I want a whole line of these pine trees, I have to decide how I want it to stitch out. Now if I just leave it like this, I can go up and click Export as a machine stitch, and a little screen shows up and I have one pine tree. And there I could save it, or I could send it to my machine. Well, that's fine just for one tiny little pine tree that is a 6 millimeter stitch at the width. But what if I want a whole line of pine trees? Then I have to have stitches that lead into and out of the pine tree. And for that reason, to show you what I've done in the past, no guarantee that it's going to work. I'm going to start with red for my line, and then I'm going to choose 0.5 millimeter line, and then down here I'm going to choose the polygon draw. These are all straight stitches, and I think I'll be better able to do a proper job if I do it with the polygon draw by selecting points. Now I'm going to start out here, click once, twice, and then go up just as I would expect this design to stitch if I were going to stitch a whole row of them. Now the important thing is that this neck point must be on the same level as the first point. So let's just right click and I'll show you how to make sure that works. Here's my little red pine tree. I'm going to zoom in tight on this area so I can see. And then you have some tools over here, and that's to edit the nodes. And here's where you can straighten things out. Looks to me like that pretty close. Let's just move it to make sure the bottom is on that, and I'll move that one slightly to make sure the bottom of this little green node, green meaning start, it follows the pattern, and finish. Now's my time also if I want to get rid of any of these points or move them to a better spot. I'm holding down my Control key because these are all sharp points. You can see this one's a little high. Wasn't quite following to cover up. You could also zoom in closer to actually set these points initially, but I was just trying to do it quickly. And as usual, quick doesn't mean the fastest way to do something. I think I'll move that down slightly. There we go. Now at this point, I don't know how I'm letting go of these points here. I'm going to go up and take a look at my export as a machine stitch. And you see the difference? Now I can do a line of machine stitches. So I'm going to save my SPX Pine Tree 1, and I'm going to put it in my Pine Tree folder and click Save. Then I'm going to close out of this. Now at this point you could send it to your machine to see how it stitches out for you, but let's just take another look at this. I'm going to say that I've already stitched it out and I like the way this works, so I'm going to export it now to my motif. Now what happens when I click on Manage My Motifs, you'll see there's my little pine tree. Well, it looks a little crooked to me. That could still be straightened out at this point by just moving my nodes around. I won't bother to do that for this exercise. But you can see the difference between letting the software do it automatically for you or creating it yourself. It makes a difference. Here's a screen capture in PREMIER+ Ultra Life View showing how I used my new pine tree motif to create a border. Just one thing you could do with your motif. Here we are in the PREMIER+ Embroidery Extra, and you're going to do the same thing you did with 6D. Click on the PREMIER+ Create, and a screen will pop up, and we are going to choose Start a New Design with No Picture, and click Next, and we're going to be in the Draw window. Click Next again. In our next screen, it asks us about the design size and the hoop size. We're going to change the hoop. As you can see here, I have it 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters. That's a teeny tiny hoop. And the way I did it was enter hoop size, typed in 10 by 10, and say OK. Finish. And now you can see our tiny little hoop that is in the center of this grid area. It's a hoop inside of a hoop. And you can see up here it's 10 millimeters wide. That's just so we can work more easily with the size of our stitch. We're going to click on Mini Picks again, find our pine tree, open, close out of that, and I'm going to just move it up a little bit so I can keep track of the size, and just click and drag down. So we're at about 8 millimeters at this point. Maybe I'll go a little less. Okay, so we have our pine tree, and again, clicking on Machine Stitch, Export as a Machine Stitch, you see we have one little pine tree. And I'm going to show you something I didn't show you in the first part in the 6D, but you can see it in there also. When I click on the Edit Nodes and then just click on the pine tree, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit better. You can see up here that this is where it ends. So if you were going to have a connecting point, you would have to connect a node. See if we can get rid of that one. There's the start. It starts there and it ends there. You could conceivably have a running stitch out here, but it would have to go beyond this lowest point, otherwise your next tree would be overlapping. So let's just try that. Put it in at a different point. If it'll let me move it. Edit. There, it's slightly late. Sometimes it's letting me move it. Okay, I'm going to move it over to here. You see, I'm trying to keep it even with that green node. Now let's see if I can add a node here. Add a node here. And will it let me then move that node? Right click, edit, and see if I can move that node up there. Okay, but I think I want to have another node because I might want to clip these off. So we'll see if we can add a node here and then back here again. So what I just did was a little bit of a tie-off before it jumped to here. Now let's see what happens when we click on Machine Stitch, Export as a Machine Stitch. They're kind of close, as you can see. Let's move our whole tree over and see if we can edit that last node by dragging it out more. Now we're really pushing the limits here. See if that'll work. Machine Stitch, Export. That's a little better, but not much. I think I liked our first version where we were able to draw our own nodes in the order that we saw fit. So the other thing we might do is, let's see if we can make this thinner. I don't think we can do that at this point. Let's try. Now all we can do is make it smaller. But that might give us some room. Let's see. Not happy with that at all. And if I move this out further still, you see I'm almost at 10 millimeters here. I have a little less than 1 millimeter on this side, or just about 1 millimeter. And let's take a look at it again. Machine Stitch, Export. Now it's still cramming them all in, but I guess it's whatever look you like. I'm just not thrilled with that version. So I'm going to see how far I can go back till we get rid of that mess. I'm going to see if I can save this just as a drawing. Save as drawing, and I'm going to call this Pine Tree 2, and notice it's a 4QB. That's the picture file. We may still edit the nodes, but it is a drawing. So I'm just going to center this and do exactly what we did before, using a color that will show up. In my case, I'm going to use red again. And I'm going to do the same thing using the polygon draw, and I'm going to start here. Getting a little sloppy again as usual, but you know we can fix that with the edit node. Now this, you can go back if you want a whole tree trunk, and then go back out. Let's see, let's go right about here and right click. That does look a little sloppy. Those nodes could use some fixing up. I'm just eyeballing this. I could put the nodes at this point, the grids, down to 1 millimeter to make it a little easier on myself, but why make it easy? It's the sound of my garage door opening. Okay, I can tell that this doesn't look good here. It's right in here, I guess, that I have to make the change. Kind of congested in here because I did those extra little stitches to tie it off. For some reason I can't get this to straighten out. Holding the control key. Let's look at the machine stitch, export as machine stitch. And I still like this better. It has a little space in between. And in this case, because I doubled back before going on my exit stitch out, I was able to have the bottom of it look like the ground, perhaps. Again, you can do some more fiddling with this. I highly recommend stitching it out, but before you stitch it out, you definitely want to save it as a machine stitch. And the output, I'm going to name this one Pine Tree 2, and that will go with the drawing, and save. And it's saved as an SPX, which is the smaller of your machine stitches, and click close. Remember, if you want to send it right to your machine, you can use this tool right here, but I'm just going to close out for now. And that's about all I can tell you with creating motif stitches. You're going to find that some designs will work and some will not. If you're trying to reproduce a stitch from another machine, it should work because that should have the shape of the entry point and the exit point so that you can have a whole row of the stitches. If you just want to create one little design, you can have the software do it all for you, as we showed earlier. So I hope this answers some of your questions, and if you have any more concerns about motif stitches, just email me.